Welcome, everyone. It's nice to have you all here. We'll get started soon, but I wanted to just quickly mention that we're going to give away a Ledger Nano S crypto hardware wallet, and we're going to ask a few questions at the end of the session. And the winner with the fastest correct answers posted in the chat will win the prize. With that said, Daina will be joining us as well. I believe there are some slight technical difficulties that we're going to address shortly, but maybe we can start with the introductions. My name is Farshad Abasi. I'm the Chief Security and founder of Forward Security. But before I go and do a deep introductions on myself, I'd like to introduce our other speakers today. Kris Reed, co-founder at Neo Financial, Daina Proctor, associate partner in security intelligence and threat management operations at IBM, and Michael Castro, founder and executive risk advisor at RiskAware. So Kris, maybe we can get started with yourself. Can you tell us a bit about your background and Neo Financial?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll start with Neo, since that's what I do now. Neo's a fintech company that we started about 2 years ago now, and the goal at Neo is to build a new banking experience for Canadians. We currently offer a MasterCard credit card and a savings account. The credit card offers the highest, I think, cashback and rewards in Canada. The savings account, the highest savings account rate in Canada right now, I think. So hopefully get into products and fully available through your phone or our website. And we have big plans to continue to move into the banking ecosystem in Canada. My background before Neo has been as a startup founder. This is not my first sort of startup company, and I've worked in the fintech space for a long time, including working for companies including Stripe, but also as the CTO at a company called Vogogo from a few years ago. And at that company, I was involved in crypto and in high-risk payments. I have a technology background and a master's degree in software engineering.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kris. Really appreciate that. Michael, you've been in the security field for quite some time. Could you tell us more about your background as well?
Sure. Thanks, Farshad, and it's great to be here today. So myself, I am a cybersecurity fellow, well over 20 years in the cybersecurity space. I've worked with some great Canadian institutions, including Suncor Energy, Canadian Tire, and Loblaw companies, but I've also been in the finance space, obviously in the retail space and the healthcare space. And right now I am founder and I'd say CEO of RiskAware. We are a small boutique cybersecurity firm, really specializing in helping small organizations, small, medium businesses, as well as startups and non-for-profits really get a grasp on what security is, particularly in the governance and corporate space.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks very much for that introductions, Michael. I guess it's my turn. Daina is still joining us. What I'll do is I'll provide a bit of background on myself, and then hopefully Daina will join us. So I'm Farshad, and I've been in this IT industry for about 25 plus years. My background is also in software development. I spent the better half of my career, the first 10 or 12 years, building applications and systems for all kinds of organizations, small and large. Pivoted into security as a full-time role in and around late 2000s. Went into the financial sector, worked at HSBC, and helped run their global application security program, and pivoted into other duties at the bank, including being the head of IT security for HSBC Bank Canada, and finished my tenure there by being the principal security architect in charge of their enterprise architecture, as well as cloud and application security and other domains. It was quite an interesting adventure as I helped roll out in modernization and move and try to work out a way that we could securely move workloads into the cloud. But left the organization in around 2017 and has started Forward Security. The company is now almost 3 years old, and we help organizations with anything code and security related. So that's me. And since I don't think Daina has been able to join, maybe we'll just start off with a few questions. So as a leader who's been in the technology industry for some time, Kris and Michael, what are your main security concerns, and what are some of the top concerns from the perspective of your customers or clients? Maybe Kris, we can start with yourself.
Sure. I think our clients probably take security for granted. I think most people do. they of course want their money to be safe. They want their personal information to be safe. Given that we're offering financial products, we required by law to collect some personal information, and I think our customers expect us to be responsible stewards of the data that we have about them, including their financial records and things like that. So that's what our customers expect. What my concerns and needs are, I would say kind of splits into two categories. I like to think of it as there's a technology side, having great automation for security, having great, detection, having scanning, having firewalls, all the amazing tech that's out there. But there's a very real other side to it, the non-technical side. And for me, that's things like educating every single employee at Neo, making sure that we have the right policies in place, the right communications, so that everyone understands those policies, making sure that as our business changes, that everyone understands how those changes relate to security, right? So that's the people side of security, and I think that's just as important as the tech.
Yeah, the people side is quite important. They actually say, no matter how much technology you throw at the problem, it's always the people stuff at the end that tends to break some of the security, and that's true both in terms of the development side as well as the corporate security aspects. And I guess with that, Michael, what are your views? You have quite a bit of experience in this industry, worked with quite a few clients at all sizes, shapes as well. What are the security concerns that you see from your clients?
Yeah, for sure. I think Kris has kind of hit it on the nose there. Organizations really have to look at it both from the security of their own side and from the security of what the expectations are, and almost to the demand of their clients as well. I think it's inherent on all organizations, to take security seriously, and not all organizations do that. It is a challenge for some, both from the large size and from the small size as well. But it really is that technology piece, it is the people piece, and it is the process piece as well, right? Really with the policies and understanding all that. But customers are expecting that now, right? I mean, we see in the news every day another cybersecurity incident. This week it's the pipeline incident on the Eastern Seaboard, where a ransomware attack has brought down the gas pipelines for Colonial.
That's the news.
A large impact on consumers now in terms of the price of gas in the short term. And, a lot of customers and a lot of individuals will be saying, well, why didn't that organization do more?
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Michael. So when we're talking about the financial sector, and what are the key risks associated with fintech and fintech products, and what challenges do companies in this sector face when it comes to security? Michael, you've dealt with companies in this sector, and Kris, Neo Financial is in that sector. So
yeah,
if I could hear from both of you on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think.
Do you want to lead this time?
Yeah, I think financial companies and tech companies, really have to struggle with almost its 80-20 rule, right? I think there are 80% of cyber risks that affect every organization, and there are 20% that are really unique to certain types of industries and verticals. Overall, I think, the threat is always out there. We're seeing a lot of threats in the email space, a lot of email attacks that are coming in, whether it be phishing, ransomware, etc. But really for the fintech space, I've seen a lot of issues around third-party access and connectivity into the fintech space. We've looked at, malware, where we've seen a lot of effort being brought down to infect systems in the fintech space. And really the big piece is really on the AppSec side. It really is about, their web applications of these organizations, and really the strength and the means to build a resilient product and platform that really can protect.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I won't add too much to that. I think the unique thing about being in fintech is that you are a bigger target. I think no matter what else you do, you don't necessarily have bad actors targeting you with as much excitement, as when you're a fintech. And I'm sure, anytime Neo gets press, something in the news or an article about us, we'll see that attention
immediately.
Yeah, and that's the unique thing. A lot of other companies just fly under the radar, the security because of obscurity sort of thing. And that's not the case for fintechs for sure, especially in 2021. Yeah, so that is a big worry and a unique problem. But like Michael said, I think 80% of what we should actually do are best practices for all companies.
And you make a good point, Kris, because being in the financial sector, it's a bank and there's money, right? So for them, what are attackers trying to do? They either want money, right? Or they want something they can sell for money. The data, like if there's a lot of PII, they can dump that and then sell it for money. But if you have that money, they can change the account balances, move money and doing all that. That's a pot of gold. And so there's always a heightened attention to security. We had a client who built a mobile payment app, and then as the moment they launched it, I guess the moment they put a press release, there's people, they were monitoring the API calls and they just noticed a crazy amount of API calls. They don't even have customers yet, but these were just people that found out that there's a new financial product being launched, and then immediately they were being scanned. And so this founder was really aware of it and was monitoring it, and the numbers were just astonishing in terms of what happens behind the scenes. So yeah, definitely. I guess the next question I wanted to ask is, digital transformation has been what everyone's been talking about for the last 5, 6 or years or longer. And I was a part of that. I was involved in HSBC's big, massive digital transformation project that went on for 3+ years. But given the particular pandemic, there's been an acceleration in digital transformation. What security challenges are companies facing during as they go through the digital transformation journey, and what can they do to incorporate security in a fast-moving environment? Kris, you guys are moving pretty fast. What are and Michael, you deal with a lot of organizations that are going through digital transformation. What are the challenges, and how should they be dealing with security in that fast environment?
Yeah, I'll go first on this one. You're right. We're not necessarily going through a digital transformation because we're building from the ground up. It's a startup company.
You're transforming the industry.
Yeah, we're transforming the industry, but not necessarily transforming like our legacy products or something like that. But we do kind of have that same challenge of moving very fast. And I think the big challenge is whether you're transitioning or building from scratch. There are going to be a lot of distractions.
Yep.
It's a big enough lift just to get your software in the cloud. It's a big enough lift just to get your product to market. That could be all consuming. So I think making the time, putting aside the time and the money and the energy to be conscious of security is probably the most important and challenging part for anyone who's busy. And I think that includes again, big and small companies. I would also say that, as you're moving into more of a cutting edge space, there's just less information out there. There's less best practices out there. There's less tooling out there. There's less off the shelf products out there that will help you, when you're, hey, we're in the cloud 100% now. The maturity is good. It's getting better all the time, right? But it's not 100% as good. And I still think there's a gap there where companies have to assess it very carefully and then put in place some sort of additional controls to really shore up. Hey, maybe this cutting edge technology isn't just out of the box secure. We're going to need to make sure that we put some extra effort into it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What about you, Michael? What are your experiences with the digital transformation challenges from a security perspective? Or
yeah, I think, digital is a great space. There's no doubt about it, right? But, as Kris said, there's a lot of cutting edge in there. There's a lot of net new, and there's a lot of trying things that others haven't tried before. And there's also a lot of push to be the first. And, having come from those type of organizations that have wanted to be in that space, that leaves little room sometimes for thought or sometimes consideration of where security has to be in that space. So, it really is about transforming and being that innovative organization and being the first ones out and having that unique product or service for sure. But at the same time, not putting so much speed into it, that building in that security, that really looking at it from a design perspective and thinking it through, because I think it's one of those that any organization would be happy to be the first one out the door, but they don't want to be the first one to be broken down by a security incident and fall flat.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and including some of the technologies are so new as well, like containers and all this, the cloud in particular itself. People don't really know how to use them, or the technology is so new in case of containers that people are just sort of jumping into this stuff and adopting them without really looking at it in a deeper way. Hey, I'm putting all my eggs in this new technology basket, if you will, and what are the risks? And with every with every technology, it takes a number of years for it to mature and for all the problems to be discovered and for the industry to adopt it. So yeah, that is somewhat of a risk that if it's not taken care of, it can become a problem for organizations for sure. So over the last 5 or 6 years, as we're talking about all these things, cloud has also been getting increasingly being adopted by organizations. I know at the bank, we started moving in that direction in around 2015. We started conversations in around 2012, 2013, but it was the kind of conversation where the IT teams would talk about it and everyone else is like, oh no, cloud, we're not going there. We're a bank, right? Banks don't use cloud. That's what the conversation was like until around 2015, where we brought in one of the top executives was from Amazon, and he was like, okay, I come from Amazon, you've hired me, we're going to go to Amazon. And there was a lot of screaming and pulling people along, but it became my job as the security architect to make sure that when we're moving it, we have the equivalent security controls, right? If you can provide the same level of security, why would an executive guarantee? It's not about the how it's done, it's about what you're actually doing, right? So we turned that conversation around. We went to the executive and say, at the end of the day, all you care about is that you check these compliance boxes and your data is secure. If we can accomplish this in a totally different way, would it matter to you? And they can't argue it shouldn't matter. And so that's how we pushed along. And 2016, 2017, we were able to move a bunch of our workloads, some of the key workloads in internet banking in Europe, certain countries over to the cloud. And then it just sort of went from there to the point that now HSBC architecture adopts a cloud first principle, and in fact, Google first. So everything that they do, they have to ask themselves, can we put this in the cloud? Can we put it in GCP? And if not, it's they think twice about that. But it does bring about a lot of challenges. And I'd like to hear from you, gentlemen, what are some of those challenges that what are some of your thoughts around companies in the fintech sector moving their most sensitive assets to the cloud?
Yeah, so I'll start on this one. So I do a lot of public speaking, and Farshad, I agree with you. 5 years ago, people would ask me and say, Michael, what do you think about security in the cloud? And my first indication back then was don't do it, right? Don't be going to the cloud. There's too much uncertainty. All your data, all your information is going out of your hands. You can't put your arms around it. But you asked me that question today, and it's a total 180. Really right now it is about absolutely the cloud is, with the right circumstances, we always put that little asterisk beside it, is the right approach to do. We see large organizations like Microsoft, Amazon, Google investing millions and millions and millions of dollars building security infrastructure and security programs, employing hundreds, if not thousands of people to protect those infrastructures. And there's a lot of effort being put in there. And I have to say, I don't think there's any one company that could probably do it better than what it's done. Now, we say that, of course, with organizations really having to consider their SLAs, how they're using it, making sure, of course, that there's still a piece for each organization to take upon themselves, is not just pay a cloud provider and they'll take care of everything for you. There is some onus and responsibility on each and every one of us in how we use it. But the capabilities of technologies there today are fabulous and really worth considering for any organization.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Kris.
I was going to chip in and kind of add on to what Michael said there. And if you think about how cloud resources work, they're increasingly moving you towards sort of a la carte type systems, right? Pay for what you use type systems. And the big advantage of those systems is that typically I actually think the attack surface area is smaller. So, instead of running an entire server, you're running a container, smaller attack surface, right? Instead of maybe running a container, you're deploying a function into a serverless environment, even smaller attack surface, right? Instead of a server that has hundreds of open ports, you have no open ports, right? You have by default, zero trust environment.
That's right.
These sort of serverless cloud environments. And so I think that's actually a huge security advantage. And the companies like Microsoft and Amazon are, ensuring that the underlying systems are very, very, very secure. And then you're really having a much smaller attack surface. And I think, yeah, as Michael said too, there's no way any company in the world can do it better. You know, startup or big company, if you run your own data center, you really run your own hardware and servers, I guarantee you can't do it better than, you know, these big cloud providers.
Absolutely. And Chris, it's funny because those are the arguments we used when we were trying to sell this to the executive, right? Hey, like, you know, Microsoft has got specialists in this stuff. We don't have the same level of specialty. It was a hard conversation. At the end, they kept persisting, well, it's not in the data is not in our control, right? You know, we don't have it. It's not here. Like, they wanted that data in their hands, in their own data center, disregarding all these other arguments. And what, you know, at the end, it was sort of like, well, you know, if we can give you the option that you can throw the key out and all that stuff is gone at any point, will you be okay with it, right? So a lot of it relied on key management, encrypting the stuff with our own key, I think control was a big part of it, having control and being able to get rid of it, or, you know, do what we want with it, and nobody else being able to see it, right? And a lot of the technologies that are available in AWS and Azure, and now to an extent to GCP was behind in that sense, in terms of like providing hardware security modules that you can bring your own key, all that type of stuff. They didn't offer those, but the other platforms definitely provided those capabilities, which we leveraged and were able to comfortably move into the cloud. I just want to stop for a second because Daina has now joined us as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Daina. We missed you in the first part. Perhaps I can get you to just do a quick intro, a bit of a background on yourself and your role at IBM in the security intelligence and threat management operations space.
Yeah, and my apologies for having some technical difficulties getting in, but pleasure to be here. And what a great time to come into while we were talking about cloud. I'll provide maybe a different perspective.
I'd love to hear
it. The opinions shared so far. My background. So I started off certainly in product development and product, specifically in the telecom industry, and spent a number of years in that industry, and encountered security more as a check mark that I needed to get through to bring my product to market within the telecom space. Fast forward 20 years, I have been in security from an IT perspective on security management, operations growth, operations refinement, and certainly the micro-segmentation towards the cloud adoption has been a big part of what I've been working with. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of different industries, a lot of oil and gas, but for the most part, fintech in the financial industry. So I'm thrilled to be here today and be part of the conversation for the element I can be. If I could chime in just a little bit on the cloud aspect.
Please do.
Just as a contrary, the Ponemon Institute, right, every year puts out our cost of breach data report. And every year, going back to 2005, when we really started hitting our groove with having connected data and cyber data breach, Ponemon has started looking at what goes into the cost of breach and what are the major challenges that are causing the breaches. And the two major ones last year were, as they always have been, the misuse of credentials, right? People have either stolen or misused credentials, but the other one was misconfigured cloud, right? There's this, in my experience, there has been a misbelief of moving workflows and the micro-segmentation to moving them to cloud has protection, and it hasn't been commensurate to the need. So anyways, I'll just throw that out there, that has been my experience, that the cloud comes with a bit of, when it was in a data center years ago, and I'll date myself, when we could walk in and we had to at retinal scan and walk in, we knew the perimeter. Now with the movement to cloud, a lot of who's touching our data, who's pulling it, who's changing it, we don't have view. Anyways, that's my contribution. And again, I'm so sorry for being late joining the party.
And that's a good point, Daina. Thank you for that, because the security operations aspect is often, and the threat intelligence and all that kind of stuff is often what's overlooked. Organizations move pretty rapidly into the cloud. They build these modern applications, but I'd say a majority of them that we work with, when it comes to that aspect, hey, what are you doing in terms of like a visibility, what detective capabilities, like monitoring capabilities and threat intelligence and all that? Those aren't conversations that are often an early part of it. It may come a lot later, or with organizations that are way higher in the maturity scale. But that's my experience from the companies that we've worked with. Michael and Kris, is that similar? Like what are your experiences when it comes to those areas?
I've been running production workloads on AWS since 2007. So way longer than most people probably have.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was pretty sketch in that first year. But something I've noticed is that back in the early days of cloud, and often with cloud migration projects, the model used is a perimeter model. So it's sort of like, let's put stuff in the cloud and then let's build a fence around it, and let's figure out how to build that fence, and keep bad guys on the outside and all our stuff on the inside. And that model is, I think, where you start seeing cloud misconfiguration leads to breach. What's increasingly happening, especially in my opinion, in the last 3 or 4 years, is the zero trust model.
Yep. Where
every single resource in the cloud is by default completely inaccessible by absolutely anyone, anywhere, at any time. It's just gone. And then you are, allow listing very specific access from a very specific system at a very specific time with very specific credentials and so on and so on. And that zero trust model is, I think, actually making a huge impact on that kind of breach. And that perimeter model that was sort of the legacy model of build a wall around everything. That's really, I think, not the way to do it these days.
Totally. And that was my experience as well. So we went in that direction, Kris, at the bank. And, we started that whole zero trust journey, re-architected all our applications. Daina, we started that micro-segmentation, all those kinds of things that all went with the zero trust model. We're like, don't trust the parameter, put everything in little micro-segments, map them out, who should be talking to who, and that's it. And zero trust. And that's been a game changer. It's definitely a game changer. And a lot of organizations are still not thinking in that way. We encounter a lot of them that just put the perimeter and then here's the firewall and here's the stuff in between. And that's great for attackers, right? Because, it is eye-opening to see how quickly they can be on the inside, right? And as we've noticed in the news, there's been a lot of talks about this organizations like SolarWinds that have been compromised through malicious source code. Or every week we see a press release where a project owner gave up their project and someone else took over the project and they started to use it maliciously. And now all the building blocks of your software inherently have vulnerabilities in them that this new project owner has pushed in. All those kinds of things require a heightened attention to security, looking at zero trust model and who can talk to who and that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely. So continuing. So I guess the next thing I wanted to talk about, we've been discussing various pieces of security and challenges. Let's talk about security programs, because I guess that's the theme of this Fireside chat is about. How do security programs benefit organizations? Michael, I'm sure you've helped dozens of companies implement security programs. So let's start with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's, we've talked so much about cloud, we've talked about applications and web, and I mean, that's absolutely a focal point and a big part of, putting security into your program and your needs. But as we started off on our conversation right at the beginning, there really is a lot more to it. Organizations have to look at all the levels of where security fits in. And it's not just on their product, it's not just on their service, but it's about their organization, it's about their people, it's how they do business and how they put security in. And I think for a lot of organizations, their understanding of security is so much about technology, or the type of technology, or the capability from that aspect, but they forget a lot of key things. They forget about where policy fits in, having the rules, and having both their employees, their staff, their management, and even their customers understand where security fits into them. And they forget about some of the simple things like training and awareness and building all that in. So organizations really have to look at a program that is kind of end to end, and understanding that in security there really is no end to all that extent, right? It isn't a path that one builds on in a project and starts and has a finish date, and you're really going to bring security kind of to closure at the end. Because with the evolution of how the attacks and the threats come to organizations, really is an ongoing life cycle of a program that constantly needs to be reevaluated, readdressed, and reprioritized as organizations go through it.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Thanks, Michael. Kris, Daina, how about you? Kris, maybe you want to tackle this one. How do security programs benefit organizations, including Neo? What is Neo doing in that regard?
I think the main benefit that I think about is is being proactive, right? So, you can always be reactive. You can always say, hey, we're setting up something new. Oh, I guess it's running now. We better secure it. You're being reactive. Or, hey, there's this risk we heard about, SolarWinds. Let's be reactive, right? But the security program is about saying, let's really think ahead here. Let's make a long-term plan, and let's have milestones, and let's have goals. That proactivity really lets you get ahead of the game, right? And I think companies that do a lot for security, but don't really develop that sort of documented plan and policies and program proactively are really going to be just in a much worse position to deal with anything that comes along.
Do you see security as an enabler for Neo, increasing your market space or that stuff, or do you see it mostly as a something that's more preventative?
Yeah, I see it as us just being responsible. I don't necessarily think of it as, this is the thing that sets us apart from everyone else, especially from our customers' perspective. Frankly, if you ask, I think, any of Neo's customers, what's the most secure bank in Canada? They're going to be like, wait, they're not all secure?
Yeah, that would be my first question.
Yeah, so I think, it's not necessarily a differentiator, not necessarily like a marketing bullet point for Neo, but it is more about being responsible and protecting our business. I think financially speaking, that proactivity pays off in the long run. So it's also financially responsible for us.
Absolutely. And Daina, how about yourself? What are your thoughts on benefits of security programs for companies?
Yeah, and I resonate with a lot of what Michael was saying, and Kris as well, right? Is that ability to be proactive. And if I add on to that is, excuse me, with often our focus is around IT and enabling the workflows to connect, and our clients to do wonderful new innovative features, especially in fintech, right? The adoption of able to bring in a check on our phones was something pretty revolutionary not too long ago. To track a payment around the world is something that we now have as commonplace, right? But the security within the SWIFT environment, the security within our payments processing took a long time to come up to speed, like you're saying, Kris, of, well, now we just expect it. Okay, but how are financial institutions from a programmatic perspective able to optimize so that this cost of doing business actually enables future innovation, right? There's ways that we can find efficiencies, and there's a number of folks that I have the pleasure of working with who, when we start talking about things like, well, what are your capacity modeling stats for your organization, right? There's not a lot of comment coming back. So we say, okay, Sev1 surge. How are we staffed to accomplish that? Right. Okay, SolarWinds occurs. The next SolarWinds occurs. Something occurs, right? The latest application we've released, actually, we found to have a compromise in it, or data is being actually released, or it's open that it shouldn't. Who's on board for that? Running through those simulations. So that, to your point, having a program to identify what is the guiding principle and testing it and validating out from a process, who's on board for it? Do I have the team? Do I need surge capacity? Even just to bootstrap your organization. All of those things, I'm happy to say more clients are more interested in talking about that now. Unfortunately, it's because I think they've had a few bumps along the road. They've realized it's the probably the better way to approach it. So program, if you're not planning, you're reacting. So
absolutely. I think that's the big message is, yeah, if you just do it ad hoc, you may not be addressing the right areas. You might be spending too little or too much money, but you have no idea, and you might be missing pieces. So it's really important to bring it all together as a program and look and see, are you doing the right things in the right places? And, and as Michael can tell you, there are frameworks that can be used to determine that, like the NIST cybersecurity framework or the CIS critical security controls, to figure out for your organization, what are the areas where you're mature and where you're not, and measuring that your maturity level across the different domains, and then creating a roadmap or a program in accordance to that, rather than just sort of taking reactionary measures. Absolutely. So now we're talking about this program, all these security programs, and I'm sure the audience is probably wondering, how do you build this? What are the components of a security program, particularly for fintech companies? And then, by the way, I see a couple of questions on the chat, so maybe we'll just take those questions before we go on here. Patrick is asking, what are the KPIs that you would use that correlate to cybersecurity ROI? Who'd like to take this? Michael, would you want to maybe tackle this one, Chris?
Yeah,
you're VCISO, right? So you deal with a lot of KPIs.
That's always a hand grenade because, you know, it's the ROI on cybersecurity is sometimes very questionable. But, you know, there are some really key indicators, I think, that show where success can come on, you know, a cybersecurity program. You know, we have to look and organizations have to really look on what are we getting accomplished and what are some of the capabilities that we're building in that are going to show that our cybersecurity program is working. You know, and, you know, it isn't necessarily on the capabilities of, you know, how many malware attacks did we have or how many threats did we stop at our perimeter with a firewall. It really is, you know, can be measured on what is the success of our staff in being able to identify a threat that is put in front of them. What are the numbers of our phishing simulations, for instance, where our capabilities, you know, we could see a measured response in terms of success of not being tricked into doing that. And, you know, there are other areas that we can even look at in terms of, you know, satisfaction or capabilities that are drawn from, you know, steps that we've taken inside that organization. And, you know, where those aren't distinct, I think true KPIs, and Daina, I'll look to you for some ideas from your side as well. You know, it really is a matter of being able to measure where an organization's been and how they have been able to handle security, and after, you know, that investment, after that program that they've put in, you know, what fundamental differences, you know, can they see?
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Daina, Kris, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll add to that, certainly. And I wholeheartedly agree that return on investment is it's an interesting concept. Gone are the days, truly, of being able to say, if I input this firewall, how many years does it take me to get a return on the investment that I've spent on installing it and buying it? The business case that I typically am working with folks is more along the lines of, what is the tangible business risk to my intellectual property, to my business operations, and my brand? When I quantify those, and you said, Michael, from the framework perspective, quantifying your risk within your organization, then I'm able to articulate down what are the risk factors to those and start looking at, are we improving? I think being able to say, are we secure is always the nirvana that we strive for, but we're not there. Unless we start unplugging things, I don't think we're going to get there. It's, are we better? Are we doing better than we were? Are we meeting our compliance requirements? Are we meeting our regulatory, you had mentioned before, NIST framework or CIS, ISOs? As you start systematically showing improvement in the organization, you're able to then have that discussion with the board. I like KPIs on those of how have we improved our capabilities that bring tangible value back into the organization.
Thanks, Daina. Go ahead, Kris.
I'll just be really quick. You know, I think two things kind of come to mind for me. One is, you know, I mentioned this before, surface area. I think you can actually quantitatively say our surface area is smaller now, right? So you run in 2 servers, then if you turn one off, you run in 1 server, half as much surface area. Like that's a very obviously simple example, but I think reducing surface area is massive and can be measured, can give you some idea that there's an ROI to doing this work. Maybe it's through re-architecting, optimization, and other things. I think that's a reasonable measure. And then the other is really looking at how the practices, procedures, and systems you have scale, right? Your business is going to grow, going to get more customers, especially for, you know, a young company like Neo. And we really look at from an ROI perspective, you know, are these things we're doing going to still be effective when we're 10 times the size?
Right.
And are they going to cost us 2 times as much, the same, or 100 times as much when we're 10 times the size. And so the scalability of kind of each practice tool or system we implement, along with looking at surface area, are kind of the measures we would probably look at Neo.
Yeah, no, good. That's a good point. So, Kris, I think there's another question. I think it might be directed at you. A great way to remove counterparty risk is to remove intermediaries and to cryptographically secure the transactions on a distributed settlement layer. Are you investigating these consensus-based methods?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a veiled way to talk about blockchain, which is maybe where that's going, or similar technologies. Honestly, when it comes to actual technical implementation in Neo, it's confidential. Sorry. Yep. I mean, there's some amount of like what we're doing internally I won't talk about. I will say that we are a pretty cutting edge startup company, and trying to leverage what we can while also doing a risk and cost benefit analysis. I know that's kind of not a cool answer, but I don't want to necessarily be like, well, let me tell you exactly how every single detail of our settlement layer works. Not something we're like sharing right now.
Yeah, so that makes sense, Kris. And I'll say the same. I mean, I worked on some of these initiatives at HSBC within the innovation group, and all the major banks are doing something related to blockchain and these technologies, whether it's for internal settlements or external. That work is in progress, and they're all taking action. And that's not new. The projects we were working on go back several years. So that work is ongoing, without more detail. So hope that answers your question. Let's talk about the building blocks. So what are the key building blocks? So we want to build a security program for a fintech company. We've talked about how security programs are important. Where do we start? What makes up a security program? What are the different facets that one should consider? Kris, I'm going to pick on you first. I'm curious to hear about how Neo addresses product security, and then maybe we could, Daina and Michael, I'd love to hear from you as well.
I feel like I'll kind of be repeating some of the stuff I've already said. In terms of like, okay, well, we can look at people side, we can look at technology side, we can build out a security program. What's important to us, a long-term roadmap, milestones, deliverables, looking at scale, looking at, and then apply it on the people side, apply it on the technology side. I think that's a good start, kind of a good starting framework to building, a security program. Maybe that helps.
What about breaking it up into domains, like considering individual aspects of that program? Say, for example, security operations versus infrastructure versus application security or cloud security, or all the different versus risk management or GRC. How do those pieces come together for you?
Yeah, I was about to kind of say, like, every business is different, right? So I think at one company, you might prioritize, network or application security. Another company, maybe not as much. It really depends. So I do think it's doing a risk analysis, product by product, system by system, team by team, figuring out for yourself, what are the costs, what are the risks, and then prioritizing your investment, right? Maybe that's a good answer. But I really do think it's like you want to cover everything. In a perfect world, you do everything everywhere all the time, and you spend all the money. But like, in reality, what you want to do is do that risk analysis and then do a prioritization exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we're running out of time. I think we only have a couple of minutes. VCSO experience, Michael, building blocks of a security program. What are your thoughts on that? And there is by the way, for the prize, the question is, which company's stated web applications were involved in 43% of data breaches in 2020? If you post that answer in the chat, you can win yourself a hardware crypto wallet. And maybe at Michael and Daina, we can hear a couple last words on the building blocks of a component security program from you, and then we could wrap it up.
Yeah, I can't type the answer and talk at the same time, so I guess I'll exclude myself. But to Kris said, it's about building, having a program. You really have to understand every organization, I think, is doing security in some aspect, whether they realize it or not. And some are doing some great pieces of security, and some are, leaving some pieces behind. And I think, to the point that every organization is different, it really starts with an assessment, really understanding from a security perspective what an organization is doing, what they're doing right, and what are areas that they should focus on. And when you break it down into different pieces, how they're handling web, how are they handling network, wireless, perimeter, training, software, hardware, all the pieces that come together, you can paint the picture for an organization with an assessment on really, what are the key pieces. Again, you have to look at the fundamentals of that company, what's important to them, how are they doing business, where are their crown jewels, and, through that whole process, then really come out with an assessment that can help build that roadmap, help build a strategic plan, and have that company understand the pieces that they should be focusing on to help them build their resilience and lessen the likelihood of a serious security impact.
Awesome. And Daina, any thoughts on that from you?
Yeah, great advice. I guess I'll be very specific on one aspect. One of the items that I have seen and experienced in the past is not taking the time to actually perform red teaming, even an active threat assessment at the onset, right? Or periodically. We make the inaccurate assumption that the information, the data, the connection points, the joint ventures that we're working with are okay. We need to step outside of our businesses as part of that building block is have that active threat assessment or that redding team, or even just pull it into a purple teaming exercise if so desired, but some third-party entity assessing, are there any indications of compromise? Not just an OWASP assessment of is your code solid, but I mean of your actual environment within your fintech or your financial aspects. Look, truly hunt to see if you can find any indications of compromise. You sleep better at night with it as part of your building block.
It's great advice. I think if anyone's on the call listening, if you have an internal security program, but you're not working with a third party externally who can really take that outside in look, you should take both approaches. You should be doing your own, but you should also have a truly neutral third party assessing you and doing like red team pen testing and other things like that from outside your organization.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you to Daina, Kris, and Michael. The prize is still up for grabs. Which companies stated that web applications were involved in 43% of data breaches in 2020? If you post the answer in the chat, you'll win yourself a hardware wallet. But once again, we thank you for attending this session, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day all.